Welcome to this episode of Whine. As always, Julie and I are so thrilled to be back with you. Today's episode, we're doing a really fun one. It's all about empowerment, not just for HR professionals, but anyone who wants a seat at the big kids table. So what are we discussing? Well, we're going to talk about how to help you get to the top of the leadership ladder in your organization. So we, as far as HR is concerned, we want to be seen as more than just administrative or paper pushers. You know my favorite line. I always say they call us revenue takers, but really we can be revenue makers and real serious business partners. We just need to tweak our way of thinking a little bit. But first, as always, hey Julie, it's wine time.
My favorite part of the day. Yes. So today, first of all, I am drinking out of a glass that says, you can't really see that, the brains of the operation, which is a gift from our dear friend, Lori Drum. Shout out to Lori. She's a whole damn bottle member. And I'm just hoping that it helps my brain function better because, I'm not real sure that's happening today. So bear with us, y'all. But I am drinking, I know this is going to be a shocker, an Italian white wine.
What?
Crazy. So I am drinking a Franco Serra. It's from Gavi, Italy, and it is agave wine. It is known for producing delicious, dry, and light-bodied white wines made from the Cortese grape, or Cortese. I'm not exactly sure how to say that. But it has some of my favorite qualities, which is why I wanted to try it. I don't know that I've tried this particular brand before, but one of my favorite Italian restaurants in Lakewood, Molto Bene, which, how much fun is that to say? Molto Bene. That is where I first discovered the Gavi wine. So it has notes of pear, apple, green apple specifically, a little bit of citrus, some lemon, and then my favorites, the minerals, the slate and the stone. And those are very prominent in this particular bottle of wine. So I am really enjoying it so far. Again, it would definitely be something that would go really well with fish, vegetarian dishes, pasta.
Yeah.
More
Definitely.
so the pasta with like the light sauces, maybe like the garlic and oil, or like those other types of, maybe not a heavy tomato sauce, but definitely loving it so far. So one more thing before I turn it over to you, Trish. I want to give a shout out. I gave a shout out on LinkedIn, but I want to give a shout out to Lauren Rudman. She is the president of the board of HR Leadership Group of Northeast Ohio. But I went to an event of theirs on Thursday, and she's a wine fan. So,
Oh, no way. So fun.
yeah. So we took a picture together, and I was joking about how, I ran into a fan in the wild, and that's so much fun. So I wanted to give her a shout out on the show as well. So,
That's
Trisha,
awesome.
what are you drinking?
Well, I went a completely different direction today. I'm actually been really into Pinot Noirs lately. And so I have this one, and I don't know how to say it. I probably should have looked it up. Erath, Erath, or Erath, maybe. It is a Pinot from Oregon. So I'm super, super excited about it. It says, this soft and approachable Oregon Pinot Noir appeals to red and white lovers alike. Then it says, crafted to highlight Pinot's best characteristics, enjoy it on its own, or discover how well it pairs with food. So let's discover, shall we? I like it very much. It so
Any further
I mean,
comments? I like it very much.
I like it very much. You know what it is? I like the way that Pinots hit your mouth while still being very light. Because sometimes I just really want a red, even though it's summertime. And with the Pinots, that kind of lightness that they're kind of, I guess, is one of their big characteristics. But yet it's still, you still can really feel it in your mouth. So it's lovely. I need to think about the flavors a little bit more before I comment on the flavors. So we'll kind of circle back to that, I guess, at the end of the episode.
Good idea. Good idea. Um, okay, so now that we have done the WINE, we're going to move on to the WHINE. Hopefully, everybody's feeling a little bit more relaxed because they've had a couple sips of whatever beverage you are enjoying. Hopefully, you're enjoying some wine with us. So let's get into it. So this is a topic near and dear to our hearts. And we mentioned that we were going to be doing this several episodes back because when we were talking about becoming a strategic partner and some of the things that are trends for HR. This isn't necessarily a trend, but it's definitely something that has been a shift over the years because a lot of times, historically, HR was seen as an administrative line item or something that just cost the company money, and as Trisha said, a revenue taker. And so we want to flip that script and show you how you can get a seat at the table with the C-suite. And again, even if you're not an HR professional, you're just somebody who listens to our podcast, you might want to get into those upper levels of leadership, you can take these same tools because it's all about learning how to speak the same language as those in those top layers of the leadership team and speaking to them in a way that shows your value to them in a way that they understand. So, we're going to be using a lot of examples and we're going to give you a lot of tips for how to do that. But one of the reasons that we feel this is such an important topic is because, particularly in HR, even if you share the same title, so say you're director of HR or you're the chief human resources officer, so you have the same chief title as other chiefs in the company, or you have the same director title as other directors in the company, chances are you're getting paid significantly less than those other people. It is just something that has happened. It probably is in large part due to the fact that most HR professionals are women. And so that pay gap that we've talked about in prior seasons, just compounds itself. And HR professionals have typically been paid less than other positions in the company, and they do tend to be women. And so, it's a compounded situation. But that's one of the things that we wanted to start off just giving you some dun 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 dun, dun stats on. So, that's Trisha's thing. So I'm going to turn it back over to her for some sort of disheartening statistics. So, maybe pour yourself a little bit more before she starts talking.
That might be a good idea for this one. Um, Before I give you a kind of going along with what Julie was talking about, like the actual pay rates, I want to just point something else that I found really interesting. Um, Bamboo HR, as you guys know, we do partner with Bamboo, so shout out to them. I think it was last year, not quite sure what the time frame was, like mid-year or something, but they put out a study, and their study said that only 26% of Fortune 100 companies, not 500, Fortune 100 companies, they actually don't have HR in the C-suite. So only 26% of them do. That it goes the very, very first line of disheartening as far as the stats go. But then, kind of piggybacking off of what Julie said, why or what is this pay difference? So, there was the study by Pay Scale, and they said that the average chief human resource officer is approximately 220,000. So, just for comparison, so y'all understand, a chief marketing officer makes about 260,000, and your CFO can make around 300,000. $100,000 a year. Now, these are all C-suite positions, so I'm kind of wondering if it isn't what Julie has already said about the fact that it's mostly women that are in these roles, because there is an quite an obvious disparity in those numbers. Another report, and this one comes from SHRM back in 2022, actually showed that HR managers on average earn about 15 to 20% less than managers that are in other departments of the same companies. So, even when you're looking at not just within the same company, but similar experience, company size across the board, we can see that happening. So it's something that we really need to discuss. And Julie and I are ready to give you some tips on how to become part of this and really vying for the position you want, but also being compensated fairly.
Yeah, and as we've already mentioned a couple of times, part of the reason is probably because HR professionals are typically women and women tend to be underpaid. It's also that revenue taker mindset where a lot of companies see HR as a necessary evil, and it's
Mhm.
something that costs them money, and it is true that it is more difficult to see how HR could be making a company or an organization money because we talk in intangibles a lot. Like a lot of what we do, it is hard to sort of figure out what the cost of that is, although we've got tips for you on that, so don't worry. But that is part of the struggle, because a chief of marketing can give reports about, hey, we spent this much on marketing, but we got this much business. So there's the correlation, right? Or your CFO can show how they saved a bunch of money because they're all figures. They're doing all the math, and that's what they do. So they're good at showing that. Or your salespeople can show how much they brought in sales. It's all very objective and it's all very numbers based, so it's easy to show. HR, it's not that easy. One of the things we talk about a lot is one of HR's primary tasks is risk management. So if you avoid one lawsuit, that's a huge savings to an organization, but it's hard to prove that you avoided a lawsuit, right? Because if the person never sues, it's hard to say that they would have ever sued, even if you know that they probably would have, right? But so it is a little bit harder to figure out how to track those metrics and how to show that data. But again, that's a large part of what we're going to be talking about today, because we want to make sure that you can demonstrate the value that you are bringing to the organization in a way that the C suite can understand, so they recognize that you really are a valued partner and you are a revenue maker. So, Trisha, what would be one strategy that you think is important for HR professionals or anybody who is looking to, go climb the leadership ladder, to start thinking about differently?
I think I would say so. HR has its own language, and it's something that we learn, I think, very early. And we have I'd say, a problem moving beyond that language once we've learned it. And so when you go into the C-suite and you are, first of all, probably sugarcoating everything and you're trying to present it in the best light possible, you're not really doing yourself any favor. So I would say translating your work into something, as Julie already mentioned, quantifiable. And that really does mean learning how to speak so that you are showing them the value of what you did. An example, we implemented a new training program. Like, that's amazing, right? So glad that you did that. But what does the C-suite see? They see dollars and they don't see the cents. The cents, not the Right? I'm trying to make a joke and it's hard.
Yeah.
But the whole point is that they don't really understand. So what? You had a program, yay. But if you can show them, hey, we had a new training program that we created this year and it reduced employee onboarding time by 20%. And then that then improved first year retention by 10%. Now you've got their attention. Now here's where you take it home. Then you can say, in doing this, we actually saved the company X amount of dollars. Now you have them. Now they're paying attention. Because bottom line is the C-suite, they're always looking for what is the quantifiable outcome of what you did. What is the business impact on what you did? And the impact, and we can say, oh, it's retention, it's this, it's that. And those are HR words and they're great. But if you don't then translate those words to dollar savings or something of that nature, then you will not have proved your point at all. And I think also, just because I mentioned it earlier, really and truly pay attention to how you're presenting the information. I think oftentimes when we do want to get the seat at the table or we have an opportunity to speak to the C-suite, we do try to sugarcoat and present them with what they want. That's not going to get you anywhere. Really present the facts, present the hard data, and just say, this is what it is. You know, whether it is the good or the bad, in both cases, you really just need to kind of peel back the fluff, even though that's what we're so good at doing, and present them with just cold hard facts. Jules, what about you? What do you think we should
Yeah.
look at next?
Well, so I'm gonna take what you were talking about one step further and say that in addition to speaking the language of the business versus just HR, you have to also understand the business inside and out. And I think that sometimes HR folks think that, well, I just have to worry about the HR stuff and I don't really
Mhm.
need to understand what they do. But let me tell you, again, if we're going back to what Trisha just said, and you need to speak the language of the business, then you have to understand the business. So if you haven't been out to a job site or you haven't gone out on a call or a days on a like what do they call those when that you a ride along like that you could do with the police. But if you haven't gone on a ride along with the salespeople to see what they actually encounter on a daily basis. If you haven't like really gone out to see what the heart of the business is, then you can't truly understand the challenges that the company is facing or that the people that you are trying to get to be compliant with all the HR policies, the things they're running into, right? So we all know I work with a lot of construction companies, so I'm going to use them as an example. But, a lot of times this is what happens. HR writes a policy or finalizes a policy, whatever, in their little office, and they don't understand why it is so hard for managers to enforce it out in the field because they've never been out in the field. So, it could be something as simple as, I mean, I have had all of these aha moments when I've been out on a construction site. It's like, okay, like a no cell phone policy, for example, because we think like that's a safety issue. People shouldn't be using their cell phones on a construction site. Okay, that's fair. But if you've been out on a construction site that's rather large and you've got somebody down at one end and somebody way down at the other end that's too far for you to be able to just shout like, "Hey, Trisha," and Trisha's going to hear it. Instead, somebody would have to jump in a vehicle and drive 10 minutes down the other side. You start to realize like, okay, maybe there's a place for cell phones out here. Or again, if there was a really bad accident, you don't want somebody to have to wait 20 minutes for somebody to drive down to the nearest phone to be able to call 911. So I think like sometimes getting out of the office and seeing what the people who are actually doing the thing that the business exists for, what they do day in and day out can really help HR start problem solving. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about in a little bit, but is anticipating problems and going to the C suite with solutions before you're asked to. So, not to get ahead of ourselves there, but I think this is part of why understanding the business inside and out is so important, is because you may be able to see like, oh, this is why that policy isn't working, why don't we modify it this way? And now all of a sudden it's like the managers are like, yes, thank you, you heard me, you saw my problem, you found a solution, this is great. And then there's also more consistent enforcement of that policy, which means there's better compliance with whatever the law is, or whatever your policy is, or whatever the case may be. And so you can get a lot of wins out of a simple situation like that. And all it takes is you getting outside of your office and actually seeing what the business does.
I actually was just listening to a podcast, and one of my favorite things that they said went right in line with what you're saying right now. And the woman was saying one of the first things that she does is says when she starts working with new people within the organization or with an organization, because she's a consultant now, she was saying that she says, explain to me what you do as if you were explaining it to my 5-year-old. And I thought that was so brilliant because going back to what you were just saying, how can we really truly be making policies? How can we be making plans? How can we do all of these changes if we don't understand the end user or what it is that they really need from us? Because in my mind, I look at your job description and I think, okay, this is what they need. But in reality, once I really speak with you and you explain to me what you do, that is not the case whatsoever. And so I can really be able to design policies or speak on your behalf to the C-suite in a way, if I'm not dealing with the C-suite already, in a way that actually makes sense. So I thought that kind of went with what you were saying as well.
Yeah, and just one more note on that. When I was practicing law, I did a lot of OSHA and workplace safety stuff. So, I um, often got called out after bad accidents, or also just after OSHA had been on site. And one of the things that I would always say is, can I just come observe for a day? And oftentimes I wouldn't charge the client for that because it was me trying to learn better and better understand what they were doing, because then I could better argue on their behalf or advocate on their behalf. Um, and if we needed to make changes, I could better figure out what those changes needed to be because I actually understood the process. And that was always received very well by the clients when I would say, hey, can I just come watch you for a day? Like I'm not going to charge you for it, but I just kind of want to see what's going on. And I think that same thing could be said with HR. It can go a long way towards building those relationships, which I know is another thing we're going to talk about. Because if how great does that look that you're like, hey, listen, I am willing to, again, come outside of my office, but also give up a day of my work. And yes, you're still getting paid, but that doesn't matter. It's that you are willing to go spend a day with them, learning from them. Like that shows that you really are committed to helping them figure out whatever it is that they need to figure out, that you're a true partner for them because you're willing to invest the time to better understand what it is they're doing on a daily basis. And I think that that is really, it says a lot. And I think that that can be really powerful.
Wholeheartedly agree.
All right, Trish, so you take the next one.
Oh, you know where I'm going to go with this. I have a saying, and Julie's heard it, and y'all have probably heard it too. Please do not come to me with problems. Come to me with solutions. I am not a person that wants to listen. I mean, I will listen to your problems. I really will. But and that's more for my friends. Like in the business world, the very first thing, if you drop a problem on me, I'm going to say, okay, so how is it that you plan to fix it? So that's the very first thing I'm going to ask you. So I think that is where I would want to encourage our listeners to really step up their game. Um, Try to look at the business, especially once you've gotten out, you've started doing these interactions that Julie and I are talking about, and really look to see if there's a situation that you could help with, or maybe it's some sort of a challenge that you've noticed, or a process that maybe isn't working as efficiently. So, really try to get an understanding of what that is, and then create a solution for it and take that to the C-suite. If you wait until someone comes to you, or if you wait until they ask you, you're being reactive versus proactive. And when we get a seat in the C-suite, or to get a seat at the C-suite, you need to really have broader vision and start thinking about, how can I fix this? And so that would be one of my biggest things. I think, okay, so um, let's go with, you see something that is happening or maybe is not happening, and it's impacting productivity. And maybe it's, oh, Julie, one of our favorite words, engagement. Maybe it's that your employees just are very disengaged, and y'all have heard, and if you haven't, go back and listen to our prior episodes, because disengagement costs, it's not even millions, right, Jules? It's billions, if I remember correctly. Billions of dollars to the US economy each year. So if you notice that your employees are disengaged, then try to think of some different strategies of how you can address this and be a partner in showing the outcomes that could possibly come from that to the C-suite. Again, you don't go to them and say something like, "Oh, people are disengaged, and that's going to be a problem." And so, like, go to them, let them know that, hey, this is the issue. My solution is this. And if we do implement this solution, here's the increase or the cost savings, or maybe it's not even cost savings. Maybe it's just an increase in revenue that I see from this. And they will listen to you, because again, you're not saying, here's just another initiative I want to try. It's, here's the problem. This is what it's costing us. Here's what I want to do. This is how it's going to either save us money or make us money. Boom, they are with you. So that's one of my favorites.
I think that's so important. And I know that a lot of times those of us who end up in HR because we hate data and we hate numbers and we are scared of it, we don't like to keep track of things, but numbers can be really powerful. And again, it goes back to that speaking the language of the leadership, and that's what they look at most of the time is numbers. So if you want to get in the game, you got to know what your numbers are, and you can't be afraid of them, and everything's a starting point. So that's the other thing to remember. Like if you just start tracking them now, and it turns out that your turnover rates are abysmal, okay, well, you got nowhere to go but up. you know like imagine how much progress you could make over the course of a year if you really start like putting some muscle behind that and some energy behind that. So don't be afraid of the numbers, I guess, is where I'm trying to go. And also, you can be strategic about it. So one of the examples that came to my mind, Trisha, when you were talking, is in past episodes we've talked about the challenge that we have in aligning HR's vision of a good hire and the manager's version of a good hire, right? And
Yes.
so, one of the things that came to mind with, it's data driven in its own way, but is to get to the bottom of that problem is to go to a manager and say, okay, tell me who your rock stars are in this role that you need to hire for. And if they tell you, okay, so it's these three people, then you go and interview those three people and figure out what are the traits they have in common. What is like, is it experience level? Is it a certain type of personality trait? Is it a certain whatever? And then if you can aggregate that data and you can sort of pull that together to say, hey, you know what? We have put together a profile of your ideal candidate. And here's the interview questions that you should be asking to find people who are just like those people that you told us are the rock stars. Like, how helpful would that be? Right?
I love that so much. I have a question. Would you ask, just because I'm curious, would you ask the manager at any point what or she thinks those people have in common to see if like what they think they have in common is actually what you find, just for, I don't want to
Yeah.
say for kick, for comps, right? I almost said for kicks, but comps is what I was looking at because obviously, can you tell I have houses on the brain? But I think of it like, are they actually stating what they value versus what you're finding to be the actual characteristics? Do you think that would be helpful at all?
I do think it would be helpful because it would at least provide some insight into the
Yeah,
manager's frame of mind. And then also, if there is like a disconnect there, that could be interesting. Then you
yeah,
just may want to frame the information you're providing a little bit differently. Like, hey, you said
right.
it's these, this is what you think they all have in common. We think these questions are what get at that. That
Yeah.
would, are your best chance of figuring out if a candidate has those same qualities.
I feel like it would also, and this completely goes totally off topic, but don't you think it would also show potential biases as well if what they think they are observing is something that is completely unrelated to what you're finding? And I don't know, but that could be very interesting. That might be a future episode.
Yeah, we haven't talked about bias in a while, and it sure does have a way of creeping in everywhere. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about it with AI. We've mentioned that quite a bit.
Right.
But yes, like just, how we can. So yeah, I think that could be very interesting for sure. For sure.
Okay, back to today. Sorry.
Yes, yes. No, no worries. Okay, I think it's my turn, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I would say that the next tip I want to focus on is connecting HR initiatives directly to the organization's strategic goals. We have talked about this before. We do training on this. And so, first and foremost, you have to know what the organization's top 3 to 5 strategic goals are. Sometimes HR is not included in those conversations. So if you don't know what they are, ask. And if they tell you they
Ask.
don't, yes, ask. And if for some reason they tell you they don't think it's important for you to know, this is where you stand up for yourself and say, no, because we want to make sure that the things that HR is doing are supporting the attainment of those goals. And then I think it would be really hard for them to say, okay, we're still not going to share that information. But once you know what those goals are, then you want to develop a plan for HR to support those goals. So, for example, if one of the goals is we want to increase our revenue by X percentage, then perhaps one of HR's goals is to reduce turnover by X percentage because that will increase revenue. So you can come up with HR's goals that will support those larger organizational goals. And then the other most important part, which I know is one of our other things, so these all go together, but is to let people know that you are actively pursuing those goals that are supporting that strategic plan. Because then you are again demonstrating that you are a partner and not just a revenue taker, but you are actively trying to come up with ways that you can support those strategic goals and get the organization to where it wants to be. And then, given what we just talked about, you got to make sure you're tracking that success so that at the end you can report on it. And even if you don't meet the goals, like let's say it was to reduce turnover by 20% and you only get to 15%, that's still a significant savings. So you don't want to take the mindset that, oh, we didn't get where we were going to go. So we just might as well just let's nobody talk about it. Just keep it secret. Nobody talk about it because we didn't meet the goal. No, you don't want to do that. You want to shout it from the rooftops. Yeah, we shot for 20. We didn't get there, but we got to 15%, and that saved us X number of dollars. And that's huge. So again, make sure you know what the strategic goals are and then figure out ways that HR can support those and then track the heck out of those metrics and then scream it from the rooftops.
You're cracking me up. Well, and something that's I was, you know me, I love my podcasts. I was listening to another podcast, and this woman, her advice to people was, well, just simply invite yourself to the meeting.
That seems bold.
Right.
What are you doing here?
Right? No, she said she would ask them. Like Julie was talking about strategic planning meetings. If you know that there is a strategic planning meeting, instead of just saying to them, "Hey, what are the company's goals?" After that meeting, ask them for a seat at the table. Say to them, "Listen, I would like to be a part of that meeting. I understand that my presence there may not, you can even say it may not seem valuable, but it will help me better align our goals to yours. So if you're looking to save money, if you're looking to make money, if you're looking to grow, if you're looking to do whatever, by being just a part of that meeting, even if it isn't a speaking part, it will better allow me." And then you do all of these things that Julie and I have been talking about. And then once you start to be able to present the data and show the savings and really show what a partner you've become, all of a sudden that seat, I don't want to say is going to magically appear, but it is like magic, but you have made it happen by everything that you've done. And bottom line, Julie and I talk about it all the time, relationships, 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 relationships. They are incredibly important. Every single step that Julie and I have mentioned to you, all centered around having a relationship or speaking to people or asking questions or being involved. So make sure that you have strong relationships. And again, it could be simply by asking them questions. It could be like Julie said, "Hey, may I come out and observe your department or your particular project that you're on?" But building those relationships will truly ultimately, as Julie's already mentioned, and I've said, and we both said it in different ways, but it will allow you to better understand what you are needed for, and how you can address those challenges. And other than that, just having a relationship with people, when someone does have a challenge, they're going to feel more comfortable talking to you. If you're there, if you're putting yourself into their daily, getting out of your office, then when they do have a challenge, they might actually think, huh, HR has been helpful before. Maybe they could be helpful again, which I know sounds like we're living in an alternate universe because no one says that about HR right now. But you know what? They do to us. And it is because we have strong relationships and we do present the data, and that creates trust.
Yep. Well, and on that note, one of the things that I wanted to point out is because I've run into this a lot, I think that it can happen, and this certainly happened to me as a lawyer. A large part of our role in HR is to be an advisor to the organization. So, we're there to mitigate risk and also advise them on the best course of action. but it can be really easy to fall into a position of being the department of no, being the one who says, you know what, it's too risky, don't do it, don't, no, no, we can't. The law says this, the whatever. And I'm not suggesting you break the law, but I have found that it is more helpful if you say, okay, I hear you. Here's my concern with that because the law says X, Y, and Z. I don't have a solution right now, but let me think about it. Let me talk to some people. Let me try to figure out if there's a different way we can approach this where we can remain compliant with the laws, the regulations, whatever it is, but also not make it so difficult for you out in the field. And I think that that is so important because HR does have a reputation for being the department of no, and it's always, well, HR told us we couldn't do it.
Yep,
It's like,
always.
right. And then we're sitting there like, it's this little thing called a law. Like, like, I don't know what you want me to tell
This
you,
little
but,
thing.
just, okay. But I think that it really is there is a lot of gray in the law. There's a ton of gray, so I do think that we want to make sure that our goal is always to be helpful within the confines of the law. So if there are ways that we can say yes. So, I've heard that phrase before in other contexts, but look for ways to get to yes versus immediately saying no just because no is easier. So like look for the ways that you can say yes. What could we do? Is there a compromise that still allows us to be fully compliant with the law, but gives us more flexibility where we don't have to be so stringent? Like, again, the cell phone policy. Like there's situations, there's a lot of situations where it is very gray, and we usually can come up with something. And that is an approach that I have taken from my transition from a lawyer advising clients to an HR consultant, where it's like, okay, one of the first questions I now ask is, well, what do you want to do? And if let's take, for example, it's an employee who's engaged in some sort of misconduct. And it's, so my first question is, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to fire this person? Do you want to keep this person? Do you want to, you know, go somewhere in the middle? But like, what do you want to do? Because then I'll try to support you in getting to that if it is possible. So if they're like, no, you know what, this person's been great and this is the first big screw up that we've had with them. Okay. All right. Well, that could be an extenuating circumstance that allows us to not do, what we've done in the past. Because again, you have to be consistent. So if you've done XYZ in the past, then you've got to have a reason you're not doing XYZ now. But we can try to get there, right? If they say, like, no, this is completely unacceptable, we need to fire them. Okay. Well, then I'm going to frame it in, do we have enough to fire this person? So I think that it's really useful to always remember that you are an advisor, but you also always want to approach it from the lens of how can I be most helpful in this situation? And sometimes that might be talking somebody off a ledge, talking somebody out of doing something that's really not in the best interest of the company. Absolutely, those times are going to be there. But other times it might be getting to where they want to be and finding a way to get there that, again, you're still complying with all the laws and you're still setting the organization up for success, but you're doing it in a way that is less risky than the way that perhaps has been proposed.
Well, and Julie, I think the problem is a lot of people think, again, going back to that HR speak, that they're only allowed to do certain things and they want to come across as all knowing. And so they think they have to have that answer right away. And if they don't have that answer right away, then they think they're going to lose credibility. And I think that if people start to think about some of our prior episodes where we've talked about, like, hey, embrace your mistakes and embrace things and really learn from different challenges, they will realize that it's actually really okay. How many times have you seen a CFO, COO, CEO, whatever, make a split second decision about something critical when it comes to the company? They don't. And they shouldn't expect you to, and you shouldn't expect yourself to make that decision either. I would so appreciate someone who said, listen, I need to do a little bit of digging. I need to do a little bit of thinking, and I need to be creative. Let me understand, as Julie said, let me understand what it is that you hope to accomplish. Give me an hour or two to rumble this around in my head, maybe to do some research. That way I can come back to you and present our best possible moves forward, or multiple moves, or only move, whatever the case may be. But I think that really HR professionals, we get stuck in this mindset that we're supposed to know all the answers and we have to give them an answer like this. And that's not true. I really, really respect and trust people when they say, give me a little time, let me get back to you because I need to wrap my head around it.
Amen. And I can speak from personal experience. When I was a baby lawyer, um, I thought I had to have all the answers, and I thought, oh God, if I'm talking to a client and I can't immediately answer, they are going to know that I am green, 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 green. As green as the grass is in Ohio and Michigan after all this rain this past spring. Um,
Ours
and
is
then,
dead now, man. We're drought.
but then, the longer I practice, the more I realize, like, oh, good Lord, everything is nuanced. And so, if anybody who's ever had a conversation with me knows that my most common answer is, well, it depends. you know?
It's my favorite.
Yep. And I say all the time, let me think about it. Let me get back to you. I just like you said, I need to think about this a little bit. I want to look into a couple of things. That's actually a sign of strength. Admitting that you don't know everything is a sign of strength.
Yep.
Admitting that you want to take some time to be more deliberate about something is a sign of strength. And to your point, we've also seen the CEOs who have made split second decisions, which
Ooh,
have turned out,
yes.
have shown up on the front page of the news, or
What?
or perhaps on a jumbotron.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, yeah, me either. Um, so, so I do. I think it's a great point. You are not expected to know everything. You're not an expert. The laws change all the time. Policies change all the time. The industry changes all the time. So it's perfectly legitimate to say, I need a minute to really think this through, but I'll come back to you with some solutions by whatever, tomorrow, the next day. Don't overpromise. But then make sure you follow up and say, you know what? I did. I thought about it. I looked into some things. Here's what I think is the best way to proceed. And then that again garners you that trust and those relationships. You're building all of those by showing, when I say I don't know and I'm going to get back to you, I go figure it out and I get back to you.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. There are several of our clients that we work with. I can think of well, at least two specifically are just kind of popping in my head as you're talking, where I've said, ooh, 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 I understand what you want to do, but I don't think that's the best call. Let me look into this. And yep, then I had the case law that I could point to. I had the research and everything to back it up. And then say to them, however, if this is the case or this happens in the future, then we can do this or you can do this. Hey, you need to be prepared to deal with that. And so that really allows you to get every aspect. You get the now, you get the future. And so asking for that time. And again, I've never had anyone tell me no or think that I knew less. They were like, oh, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to help us get this right.
All right, Trish, I think we have one last one, and I think that you should take it because it's something that you talk about a lot.
Show your worth. Do not be afraid. Do you notice I didn't even hesitate and say, okay?
Hmm.
Show your worth. Shout it from the rooftops. One of the best ways to get yourself a seat at the table is to not be shy, really and truly. Find your successes, show them. And I don't really care how you do it. If it's through regular reports, if it's an opportunity to present to leadership, even if it's just, hey, so and so, I wanted to talk to you about this initiative. I've noticed that your output has increased by X%, or I've noticed that you haven't had as much turnover recently. I just want to see, like, how does that feel to you? And really start, showing people that the initiatives and the time that you take and that speaking with you and partnering with you is really helping to improve their outcomes as well as the ultimate business outcomes. My little thing just flew out of my ear.
Yeah, and I think that this is something that can be really hard for HR folks to do because we tend to be pretty humble folk. Okay, maybe Trisha and I accepted from that, but whatevs.
We're
Um,
definitely accepted from that.
but so it can be hard to toot your own horn, to advocate for yourself or your team, but it is really important because again, this is about showing HR's value, or again, if you're not in HR, showing the value that you are bringing to the team. So all these things we've talked about you can do as a non-HR professional. So you can build those relationships. You can figure out what are the metrics that I can track so that I can prove that I'm adding value, and then show those and talk to those with your about those with your supervisor, every chance you get in front of leadership, whatever the case may be. Those are all really important things to do. And that even though it is super scary to advocate for yourself or for your team, there is a certain sense of satisfaction and pride that comes with doing so, with knowing that you stood up and you spoke your truth, and people heard you. And even if they don't hear you, even if you don't get what you're asking for, at least you did it. And I think that this is so we're gonna make a note, Trisha, and Brenna is on the call with us because she records and edits all of these. So Brenna, you
Thank
have a
you,
better,
Brenna.
yes, and Brenna, you have a better memory than either Trisha or I. So I'm going to ask you to make a
Truth.
note of this as well. But I think one of our topics should also be teaching people how to negotiate their value. So how to ask for a raise, how to ask for, because if you do find out that your comp is lower than your peers at the same level, you need to figure out how you're going to ask for what you deserve. And so I
I
think we
think
should
we
also make,
promised that.
yeah, we probably did.
I think
Um,
we did. Yes.
yes, so we need to have that conversation because that's really important as well. So Brenna said in the chat, note taken. So this is why we love her.
Yes.
One of the many reasons why we love her.
Many, many,
But
many.
yes, you want to make sure that you are showcasing your successes and you are doing so not in an obnoxious way, but just in a way that, shows again how you are adding value in the language that that C-suite is going to understand. So with
Tie
that,
it back to the bottom line.
yes, tie it
You
back
like
to the
the
bottom line.
emphasis?
Yes, I do, especially with your pen. Again, you can't
Well,
see her, but
and
and it's a Harry Potter pen. So this is
it
the
is.
magic. This is the magic we're giving you. All these little tips and tricks. But with that, we are closing up this episode, so we need to revisit the wine. So, Trisha, any more thoughts on what notes you were tasting in your Pinot Noir?
I actually do. Okay, so totally cherry. It took me a little bit, and I don't know, there's almost a tobacco or spiciness to it. But it's super brief. Like it hits you right at the end. Yeah, I really enjoy it. Again, that's why I like Pinots. They're medium bodied was the word I was trying to come up with earlier, so that you can definitely feel them in your mouth, but then they don't linger, which is why I think that they're so perfect for a summer red. So I'm very, very happy. And the other thing I forgot to say, I think it's Erath, I think is how it's pronounced, but it says Earth Heart Erath. Is that like not so perfect for us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Totally spoke to me. So
yeah,
I highly recommend it. And go Oregon.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I am still loving my wine, but that's not a surprise because it has all the qualities I like. And this is one of those things that I am learning about wine is you figure out what the elements are that you like. So, I never really cared much about that before. I was pretty impressed that I had tasted most of the notes and then I compared it to the, what's it called? The Vino app. See if I was right. And I was right about most of them. So that I feel like I'm getting my palate is being educated. I had somebody who sells wine say that before. We're educating your palate. And I was like,
I love that.
So like, are you going to give me homework? Because I'm okay with that,
I mean, as long as it's wine homework.
Right. But so I think that is, one of the things that I also just love about wine is there's so many different varieties. And once you learn what the elements are that you like, you can go into a wine store or a winery or wherever and be like, these are the things I like. And they will find you some fantastic bottles just based on you being able to say, here's the qualities I like, and it's so much fun. So that's part of why we include wine in our episodes, because we love wine and we love to share wine and we love to drink wine.
And it makes talking about all of these topics so much easier. Julie, 100%. Did I show you my shirt?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, all right. Hold on.
Enjoy Mediterranean beach wines. Oh, my. Okay.
Isn't that funny? All right. So do you remember when about 2-3 episodes ago, and I had said I went back to my favorite wine store in Grand Rapids? The gentleman there has, I think it's called the Bearded Vine is his, let me see if I can find it real quick. I think it's called the Bearded Vine. And so he has, he puts out an Instagram and he has just some funny things. He just makes me laugh. But anyways, he has t-shirts. And when I went in there and told him about what I was looking for so that I could impress you, he had told me about this shirt. And so I absolutely had to buy it.
I love it.
I know, it's just super cute. And it's very soft.
Yeah. Okay, so any final thoughts on this episode, Trish?
I would just say, look, it goes back to the very last thing that Julie and I were talking about, and that is make sure that you toot your horn. You really need to say, this is what I set out to do, and this is what I did. Even if, as Julie mentioned earlier, you didn't 100% meet that goal, that you still saved money, or you still kept people on, you still improved retention, even if it wasn't or maybe not retention, but just people being engaged at work. That is so huge. And that maybe at first quantifiably they won't be able to see it, but you watch that trickle down data and it will show up and you'll be a hero.
Yeah, and on that note, this isn't something we really talked about because we were focusing more on the tangible stuff, the quantifiable stuff. But I do think it can be really helpful to also keep some of that anecdotal information and evidence too, because it is evidence, right? Like,
Right,
even though it's
exactly.
anecdotal, it's still evidence. So keep a story log of when somebody came to you and said, oh my gosh, God, you guys helped me through that situation. Like, that could have been a disaster. Or a new employee came to you and said, that onboarding was amazing. Or, like, keep track of those things too, because stories speak to people. And so if you don't have a tangible thing to give to the C suite, you can use some of those stories, or you can combine those stories with the tangible data, and then you've
Ah.
got an even stronger and more persuasive argument as to why you are so valuable as a resource to the company. So I would
That's the
say,
mic drop moment.
yes, don't you know don't ignore the quantifiable stuff. Like we said, figure out how to track stuff, but also don't ignore that intangible stuff, because it is also, it speaks more to the warm fuzzies and the heart. But that
Which
can
is
be
what we're
just
known for.
right, and that can be just as persuasive in certain situations. So keep
Agreed.
track of both.
Love it.
All right. Well, thank you as always for joining us for another episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Reach out to us at Whine at Monarch Endeavors LLC.com. Of course, SWHINE. Give us wine recommendations, give us topic recommendations. Just tell us that you enjoyed the show, whatever it might be. We would love to hear from you. Follow us on Patreon and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next episode. Cheers.
Cheers.